What's going on, guys? Shine Yugioh here. This video is quite overdue, to be honest. YCS Brom has been over for quite a while now at the time of basically finishing up this video. Uh, I had a good time there. I didn't perform as well as I wanted to. I was on Crystron, if you want the deck I played, even though it didn't do too well at the event, let me know. X4 is terrible, but yeah, enough about that. This is fireking. It's basically a breakdown as to like how the list performs, like just in the current metagame, because we've seen it can win a YCS when you have one of the best pilots in the world, Dinh-Kha Bui. But how does the deck actually work, and what can you do in order to play this deck at like a high level so you can be taking it to tournaments and winning just like he does? So in this video, I'll be going over the deck list, a refined deck list by like Dinka's words himself, as well as I did a practice game. Fair warning, it is in not the most high elo. I haven't gotten my DB account up to high rated yet, but it's a good display of the deck's strengths as well as its weaknesses, especially the weaknesses in game 2. But anyway, enough of me yapping. Let's go on to the deck list.
And here's the list, courtesies of Dinh-Kha Bui with one change pretty much. He said that he wanted to use Dominus Impulse because it would help him in like the Malice matchup. I don't remember what he was playing instead of it, but we'll be making this change to the list. As you can see, we mostly play 3 O's of the fireking engine, with the exceptions being like the one of Old Garunix and the one of Avatar, and for the spells, one of Fireking Island. Right. Our main combo starter is Volcanics. This card is by far the best card in the deck. Its effect demands respect because it basically forces your opponent to Valor it, and because it's a fire, you can use it to crash and then like summon out your Garunix from hand, which just gets you into even more plays, and it has an effect on destruction to special summon Old Garunix, which is why you pretty much have to play this brick. It's unfortunate that it can't summon new Garunix, but I guess it would be way too broken if it could do that. Along with our 19 card like Fireking engine in the deck, we also play like 4 pot cards, which increase the consistency because you don't really need your extra deck that much. You only really need Princess and Garunix Eternity in your extra deck. And then we play like 17 pieces of non-engine. This is a lot. It's a nice compact engine, a lot of hand traps, and some pots for consistency. So overall, a pretty solid deck in terms of like really needing to see your fires for it to get going. But once this deck gets going, it's really hard to stop that like really good grind game. Like all of these things coming back on destruction, like Onyx coming back when it's destroyed, Kirin summoning back, and then Avatar you can use to summon back the Kirin, all those loops and so on. And of course, Fireking Sanctuary being the new MVP for allowing you to make Garunix Eternity on your opponent's turn to board wipe. Which is cool, because previously in the Snake Eye deck, Sanctuary was just a one-off that you would just play to search for Onyx that could then get you into Highland, and, well yes, it could be an interruption, like later on, when like the strategy got nerfed and we were playing like the Azamina stuff, you would play Garunix Eternity. The Firekings weren't really like the central focus of the deck. It was clearly the Snake Eye cards. But now the more balanced form, that being just pure Fireking, is good right now, and I think that's really cool for a metagame that's kind of swarmed with Ryziel and Malice. For the extra deck, it's pretty cut and dry, because of course we're playing Extrav, 3 Promethean Princess, because it's the card that you like second most want to keep in your extra deck. 3 Garunix Eternity, the number 1 card you want to keep in your extra deck. 2 Heater, like you don't really need 3 because Heater like works if your opponent has a fire in graveyard, which can obviously be Ash Blossom, but you're not always going to see that fire, and there are other utility cards you'd want to fit in your extra deck. Dark, because you can make it with Anima, like with the level 1 Ponyx, in order to, or like Abystial, in order to access a Dark in your opponent's graveyard. Liner, because Fiendsmith is a thing, so being able to access Fiendsmith cards from your opponent is pretty good as well. An SP, because it's SP, you just use it, it's SP. Like, no explanation needed. Typhon, honestly, I've been thinking, like, for my own personal use, to put Typhon to 3, because this seems like a deck where Typhon would be huge to use. Alright, now a bit of cut from here. And I've been thinking, for my own like personal use, like Typhon could be put to 3. This card is so good because what this deck is trying to achieve is like a minimal end board with a lot of grind game. Especially like this deck is really good into hand trap wars because you only really need to see one fire to get your engine rolling. Like if you have like a Garunix in graveyard sort of thing. Right, Typhon is just this huge body that, especially because it can stop Detonator, since it's 3000 attack, it allows for this like deck to, Sky Crisis is obviously good whenever you're losing, because it can give you the chance not to lose, right? Whenever your end board is minimal. But since this deck's end board is pretty much always minimal, and you're going for that grind game, you know, turn 3, turn 4, making a Sky Crisis is pretty good. So I think maybe putting this up to 3 might be something that I do. Obviously, 2 is just fine. It's just having it at 3 so that way, like, Extrav doesn't banish it can be the difference sometimes. And Almirage, which is a pretty good card as well. It makes it so that any normal summonable hand trap can become a fire. You can then crash with it and then trigger your Garunix. And Anima, because, number 1, making SP, and if your opponent doesn't play around it when you have a level 1 in your deck, then it's just kind of a free removal, pretty much. In the side deck, this side deck is mostly in order to counter Malice. So this deck actually does pretty okay into Ryziel, because Detonator destroys stuff anyway, so this deck's whole thing is getting their stuff destroyed. So it can actually go pretty well into Ryziel going second. The problem is Malice. Whitebinder single-handedly defines the matchup as a whole, being able to banish your pieces out of the graveyard, and its combo, like going first, if you don't draw a hand trap, is pretty much unbreakable. So, Malice is a tough matchup, which is why you're dedicating so much of your side to Malice. Like Lancia, obviously, Chaos Hunter. Also, because you're discarding a card, like most of your cards want to be in graveyard anyway, especially the Garunix, so it's not too much of a cost. I guess saying that now, looking at it, only Garunix really wants to be in graveyard from a discard, but you get what I mean, right? So Chaos Hunter is really good in terms of beating Malice as well, because it's a continuous floodgate compared to Lancia just on their turn. So now on your turn, you can't get your pieces banished. So Chaos Hunter, good card. Dominus Impulse also helps against Malice. Like, it turns off light Earths and Winds, which obviously can do something to your non-engine, that being Veiler and Fuelos, but to your main engine that you care about the most, it doesn't really do that much. And besides, just use the Veiler and the Fuelos first, before using the Impulse, going second. So, this card's really good, especially into Malice, because it can stop the banished cards summoning back. So yeah, basically this is 9 slots dedicated to beating Malice going, like, second. 2 Judgment and a Called By. Called By to beat Perulia. Fuelos doesn't really kill this deck, it's Perulia that hurts, because you do summon a lot from hand. And like, to a certain extent, Nialis, or Meows, but mostly to beat Fuelos. And 2 Judgment, because Judgment is just a crazy card. Being able to say no to your opponent's summon like their normal summon is just really good. And 3 Perulia to basically, it's good against Ryzeal. Like they have to summon from hand a lot in Ryzeal, especially in the pure builds, which are becoming more popular. So Perulia in the side, definitely. Okay, that's the lists, and that's pretty much all I really needed to talk about in terms of the lists. Uh, you'll probably know a lot of the Fire King cards already because of the Fire King's cards time in Snake Eye. So let's run some games. Here is the game I played with this deck, just to like show off how in game this like strategy sort of functions. So I lose the die roll going second. Opening hands, mistimed it here. Oh, he opens Pascalus, Mandarin, Ghost Ogre, Impulse Ash. So he's playing Marincess, and he's opened combo, sort of, along with 3 hand traps. And I've opened a pretty good hand myself, Nibiru and Drua's Worm being solid cards. Drua's Worm not being that good in this matchup because they're a bunch of waters, so it can't really disrupt anything, but that's fine. And I have Volcanics, a Garunix, and a Sanctuary. All enough engine to be able to play through pretty much all of these hand traps. So here he's just going to combo pretty much. Editing me, you basically, all you need to do is just skip up to the part where like I go for the nib. So on the summon of this, I activate the Nibiru here, because it doesn't really have any other extenders. It just kind of passes, right? And even though this is a pass, I still have to play through 3 interrupts, so he ashes my Volcanics, I go for Island, pop, grab the Kieran because I already have Garunix, and I get to trigger Garunix, and then he impulses me here, but this impulse doesn't matter. I don't need Garunix here, because he's impulsed me, I don't need to kill. Because the aim of this deck is to put up a board that can just grind out your opponent each turn until you eventually can go for the kill. So here I use Kieran to pop my own Volcanics, so that way I get Kieran on board as well as old Garunix. And then I go for a healer line because he used the Ash, right? I Princess summon, and then he Ogres me, which doesn't really do much. It stops me having Promethean Princess on board, but it being in graveyard is even better. And so on his turn, he uses the special summon. I then go Skyburn to go Ponix and an enemy. Like the end board I ended on is deceptively powerful because I have Skyburn to pop 1 or 2 or whatever, right? I then have Garunix in hand to be able to dump an Avatar that lets me summon out the Kieran. Like that's the line I do here. Or I can go for Garunix, dump a Kieran to summon out an Volcanics, that sort of thing, right? I have Princess, and I'm going to be able to go into rank 8. So it's a pretty strong end board. So, right, I Skyburn here to pop the Ponix so that I can trigger Garunix. I then dump Arvasa to summon out Kieran. He then goes into battle to swing over the Kieran, which is a good play because not only am I forced to pretty much pop the Sea Angel to like summon out my Arvasa, it also means that the Imperm he top decked for turn is now live, so he can stop the Avatar, which is pretty cool. However, the problem is I still have both Princess and the rank 8, which is just it's just too much in terms of interruptions. So, right, he goes for that, summon into that, and then I just get to rank 8 and then he just scoops up. And I have the follow-up enough to the point where I can just win the game from there because I have so many other interactions. Now, that is the good side of fireking.
Thank you so much for watching this deck breakdown. I hope you can take this info to the next level in terms of leveling up your Fire King gameplay. And let me know in the comments what other decks you want me to cover as well. And with that being said, Shine Yugioh out.